Hi, there's a number of overlapping subjects I want to cover in this video around free speech, responsibility, and well, those are the two main issues. But before I get into this, I want to put an important caveat or disclaimer. I shouldn't really have to do this, but I will, just in case anyone tries to gaslight me or distort my positions. Um, I am horrified by what Israel is doing in Gaza. In recent days alone, hundreds have died. It's an abomination. I do think it's a crime against humanity, and I think it goes well beyond self-defense. Um, I think there are some very brave groups working in Gaza that deserve a lot of respect and credit, groups like the World Food Kitchen and others, who taking real personal risks. And I understand there's a heat wave going on now, so it's really hell on earth. You have entire families being wiped out. You have a humanitarian crisis, a heat wave on top of that. It's an appalling situation, and I think there are far right figures in Netanyahu's cabinet that want to see the eradication of the Gaza Strip. Um, I am pleased this government's toughened its stance on Israel. They put sanctions on Israeli ministers, but I do think we could go further. I think we could completely cut off arms to Israel. Now, regarding the actions of this group, Palestine Action, which targeted RAF planes, that's not harmless. That's an act of sabotage that can actually put the pilots' lives in danger. It's not just a bit of spray paint. There's been civilian aviation disasters caused, as we know, by bird strikes and other projectiles and things going into the mechanism of that of the plane. So I don't think that spray painting planes is harmless. It can actually directly have an impact on the mechanism of the flight and therefore put the pilot's lives in danger. I do think that should be treated seriously. Um, I am so tired of people who think that actions have no consequences. What I mean by that is people who engage in stupid behavior and then won't take responsibility for it, or they hide behind free speech. Um, we saw this with Just Stop Oil, which is now defunct, but it's kind of some overlapping arguments here because once again, you have a group, in this case, Kneecap, which we'll be talking about in a second, um, and I I think that there's just this lack of personal responsibility. Now, on the issue of Glastonbury, I didn't watch Glastonbury, but it's no new thing. Rock stars, musicians trying to be provocative. That goes way back decades. So musicians trying to be shocking is not surprising. It's not a new thing, and I'm not surprised by it. But I do want to challenge the arguments being made for kneecap. In the latest situation at Glastonbury, there was actually another act by the name of Bob Vylan. I understand as I've never heard of them before. They're a rap punk duo, and they were shouting "Free, Free Palestine" and then calling for death of IDF troops. On that point, people might argue, well, that's military target. But in Israel, everyone has to serve in the IDF if they're able-bodied, so it could be construed as a call to violence against Israelis in general. Um, in the case of NECAP, one of their members, they have sort of stage names and the real name, so um, I I'm not going to try and pronounce it, but basically one of the members got up and was talking about the court appearance and um, said advocated for their supporters to riot outside the courthouse. Then they followed up by saying, no rioting, just love and support for Palestine, so implying it was a joke. But here's the thing, these people have a public platform. Do I think that there will be riots outside the court appearance? I don't know. I hope there isn't. But if there is, saying it's a joke isn't good enough. Um, you know, People who become fanboys and fangirls, and I was dealing with one of them in the last video, people who have no objectivity, it's just they will defend Kneecap no matter what, whatever their respective idols are. There's no objectivity when it comes to fandom. There just isn't. Um, which is one reason I've always avoided the cult of celebrity, whoever the celebrity is. The celebrities I like and respect, but I try to avoid sort of just this knee jerk defense of them no matter what. But anyway, I think that, saying it's a joke is all very well, but then when they have a track record, the same band has been up for glorifying terrorism because they literally at the Kentish Town gig, they said up Hezbollah, up Hamas, and held the Hezbollah flag. Now, they then said, we didn't do that. That's one thing that carries no respect. If you're a fan of Kneecap, my challenge to you is if they really believe in what they're saying, if they're really standing up for the principles, why don't they stand up for it when it matters, i.e., when they come under scrutiny? So, does that suggest that maybe they're just shock jocks? Maybe they're just trying to be as notorious as possible? And deep down, they know that it's not a very clever idea to glorify terrorist organizations. I don't like their whole image. And the fine girl in my last video, I'm not going to name her. I'm not going to be that petty, but she was trying to justify why they take the name they do. She told me that one of them is a teacher. I didn't know that. That's shocking if true. What sort of teacher promotes that sort of message? If he hasn't been struck out yet, off yet, I hope he has. What sort of message is that to promote? And she tried justifying their use of the name decap as ironic. To me, it conjures up all the ugliness of the Troubles, and I don't see anything witty about it at all. I don't think there's anything smart or intellectual about that whatsoever. Um, I have no respect for them. I have no respect for the image they promote. And I do think they're cards because they won't take responsibility for their own actions. I almost have more respect for them if they supported Hezbollah and Hamas and said, yes, we do. We believe they're justified. But they won't do that. They'll instead worm their way out of it and say, no, we're against violence, we're against terrorism. Um, they should take some damn responsibility for their own actions. That's what I find pretty contemptible about Kneecap. The shock jocks. They like to rile up the base and stoke things up and say how, promote this sort of narrative. But then when they come under scrutiny, they whine about free speech and they claim that they haven't actually done that. Actions have consequences. And this is another point that I find quite contentious. Their supporters say that they're trying to be silenced because of the pro Palestinian messages. There's a lot of celebrities out there who are sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. Celebrities that support UNICEF, for example, but they don't feel the need to promote terrorist organizations. To me, that is a key dividing line. Now, at the start of this video, I said I'm very critical of Israel. I don't think that there's anything wrong with criticizing Israel, and it's unfair to say that all pro Palestinians are pro Hamas and pro Hezbollah. I do think, however, some of the rallies haven't done themselves any favors by allowing that to fester within their midst. For one thing, Hamas has been overwhelmingly a negative force for the Palestinians. Instead of helping the Palestinian people, they spent money on tunnels and rockets to fire at Israel. This is no justification for what Israel's doing right now, but I honestly see the biggest threat to the Palestinians is Israeli militarism from Netanyahu's far right cabinet and Hamas. I think they're both a problem for Palestinians. Um, so, if they really want to claim this is about the Palestinian cause, they could be promoting aid agencies. They could be talking about the humanitarian situation there, and they maybe do that, but then they mix in by promoting violent organizations that are absolutely not part of the solution. So, I think that they are making a fool of themselves, not in the minds of their supporters, of course, in the mind of their supporters who are just telling it like it is. They're brave, revolutionary little mini Che Guevaras. Um, I have no respect for them at all, and I'm tired of hearing about them. Like I say, it's nothing new for musicians to try to be shocking, but at some point these guys are going to have to grow up and realize that if you say something, you should take responsibility for your own words. I take responsibility for absolutely everything I say in this channel. It's a small channel, but it's in the public domain. I'm speaking to anyone out there in the UK or beyond. I take responsibility for every word I say. Um, and I think public figures should. And I just think it's a bit cowardly to hide behind the free speech argument instead of taking responsibility for your own words and actions. If there is any trouble outside the court appearance, it will be entirely on him, even if he clarified it was a joke. It doesn't matter. That clarification doesn't matter because I think part of him wants to see rioting. Um, there's also clear double standards with the left wing support of Kneecap, and you can be sure 90% of it's from the left. Why do I say that? Because if you had some unionist group or British nationalist group, clothing themselves in Union Jacks and say promoting, let's say they were promoting far right groups like Patriotic Alternative or Combat 18 or something, and they were claiming they were doing it for whatever cause they deluded themselves that was about, you could be absolutely sure that the same people now defending Kneecap would not be defending them. So they're absolute hypocrites. I see this from both the left and the right. And likewise, Tommy Robinson supporters, will they be defending Kneecap? No, I doubt it. So the partisan left and the partisan right absolutely show their hypocrisy time and time again. They want rights, but only for them, only for their side. And this is so obvious time and time again. And then people like me who call it out get attacked for pointing out the obvious. Well, I make no apology. I will not be gaslit by anyone. I've been consistent on these matters. I think it's legitimate to criticize Israel. You know what? If NACAP were merely getting up there and saying we're against what Israel's doing, we're against the deaths of Palestinians, I'd have no problem with that. But then they ruin their argument by doing what they do. Um, I just think that they're entitled brats because they think, let's face it, they are pretty much celebrities at this point. They're more famous than they were a year ago. I suppose in terms of shock value, it's effective. It gets notoriety. It's got them fame. So in that sense, it's been effective. The BBC, for their part, decided after all, they flip-flopped a bit on this, but they decided after all not to live broadcast the performances of Kneecap and Bob Vylan on iPlayer. What my point is, why should they have a platform? The point about free speech doesn't mean that you should be given a free platform. Now, in the case of Glastonbury, I understand it's the farmer who leases the field and his daughter that run the event, so it's up to them who performs. Um, but some have said, well, we've seen political interference. Politicians not have an opinion? When NECAP has called for their deaths, can they not at least have an opinion on it? NECAP called for the death of Tory MPs. So can politicians who have seen their colleagues killed, can they not have an opinion on this? I mean, people really think that they won't have an opinion. And that's what I find incredible. The fact that people are surprised when NECAP are criticised. They act like, these guys say these shocking things, and then, whoa, people are criticising them. We're surprised by that. Why are they being criticised? Give me a break. I mean, just take some damn responsibility. This is not about their belief in in Palestinian rights. It's about what they're saying on stage. There's many people out there who support Palestinian rights who are not being censored, who are not being arrested, who are not being silenced. The reason that there's action being taken against NECAP is because they're inflammatory. It's because they are inciting violence, despite what they claim. They always worm their way out of it, but that's what they do. They get up on stage and they just incite. Um, so that's my take on it. I don't know, Glastonbury's over now. I don't know what sort of other gigs are going to come up. There'll probably be more court appearances. Um, Apparently they want to perform in the US. Well, that's deluded. America's, as we know, pretty strict when it comes to entry requirements. So they're pretty deluded if they think on these charges they're going to get into the US. I've no sympathy. Um, Although there is American hypocrisy, the Trump administration has absolutely enabled some extremist far right groups. There's no question about that. But I am so fed up of the hypocrisy of those who support NECAP, and you can be absolutely sure they would not hold the same stance if there was some right wing performance putting out a message they didn't like. I mean, if there was a right wing group promoting Israel, and talking about self-defense and talking about the Gaza campaign being justified, they would absolutely not be defending their free speech. So yes, I do call out your hypocrisy. The hypocrisy is obvious. Um, just admit that you're partisan. Admit that you're defending Kneecap because you believe they're justified, and that you probably too are sympathetic to Hamas and Hezbollah, but you've deluded yourselves that they're freedom fighters. Let's ignore the fact that they're violent homophobic organisations. I don't know how that taps into left wing ideology, but I see it for what it is. And if, pointing this out, if you want to shoot the messenger, that's fine. But I just think that it's unfortunate to see that the people think that free speech is somehow a green light to advocate violence. Never has been, never will be. And I think, in this country, there has been problems regarding free speech. We've seen, for example, the use of non-crime police, the non-crime hate incidents. I do think that's concerning. I do think it's concerning when police crack down on that. But people who advocate violence and then hide behind free speech have no sympathy with them, whatever the cause is, whether it be left wing or right wing. I don't care what the cause is. You can't do that and then expect no consequences. Um, so, as I understand it, the police are looking into the footage to see if any further action will be taken. Um, let's see what happens. But if they are charged, I'm sure their supporters will line up and say they're being persecuted because of their opinions. No, they're being held to account because they're advocating violence and disorder. That's just, I mean, what you expect.